Happy to see you all yet again. Pretty amazing. So, wait just a second. So then let's do our usual. You start, Tara, go on. But say something, please.
Yes, thank you and welcome, Venerable. I don't know where Tara went, but welcome to the teachings, the third module.
She's there.
She's here, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Venerable, I'll be offering the mandala. Do you wish to add some words, Venerable, before I chant it?
No, you say it. You know enough now. What are we doing when we offer a mandala? Last, tell the people in ordinary words.
Yes, we offer all the offerings in this world and all the
things, all the contents of the world, not offerings.
Oh yeah,
we
all right.
make offerings by giving them. It's just all the wonderful things that make people happy. It's very simple. All the wonderful things that make people happy, we offering to the Buddha.
Yes, that's it.
As a request for the teachings.
Yes, that's what we
like
do.
When you go to the movies, you pay your ticket. When you go to a friend's house, you bring a bottle. You don't come empty-handed. It's like that. It's a very nice meaning.
Thank you. Sashi perki yuksing meto ramri rablingi nihede gyan padi sange shindu mekte uwargi roku nanda shingla jerpaksho jetsun lama dam pakiena kicha kikala Session3 Jita Sampe Du Jetsin Mala Sab Gechu Kichapa Vaptu So Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamya Chayami.
When we say that mantra, we imagine Buddha happily accepts our offering. And so now the second little prayer, all these thoughts we're having, the first two lines are reminding us of our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. And the second two lines are stating our purpose, our goal, our purpose for being together. The Lamas would refer to as setting our motivation, stating where we're going with all this. Why are we here together listening? So that we can take tools from these amazing teachings about how to develop bodhicitta, so that we can be of benefit to sentient beings. This is the teachings here. They're the explicit, this is the explicit teachings about how to benefit others, you know. Sangye chadang soke tognam la jangshu badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drobha shok sangye chadang soke tognam la jangshu badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drobha shok. So in English a bit more, until we are enlightened, we're going to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the spiritual community. So by the virtuous karmic seeds we drop into our mind by listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha. May all those seeds ripen as our Buddhahood, no matter how long in the future, it doesn't matter. Why? Because then we're qualified to help others. That's what we're saying. Thank you so much, Lars. Okay. So in terms of this package that's expressed in these 13 modules in the Discovering Buddhism program, or it's all based upon this marvelous, as we know, and I'll keep repeating it, based upon this packaging of the teachings from Tsongkhapa, our 14th century lineage Lama, but coming from Atisha in the 11th century, which comes from all the body of knowledge in the monastic university system, the Nalanda tradition. As His Holiness always says, we are the Nalanda tradition. Tracks right back to that, you know, in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th century in India, which of course track right back to Lord Buddha, you know. So these teachings about bodhicitta, this technically or literally, I think, is awakening thought, awakening attitude, awakening mind. This technically bodhicitta. I mean, this is the more advanced teaching. This is like the university level. This is the thing. And this is, as I always say, it's always surprising to us to hear that compassion is more advanced. Because, and the only way we're going to know that is by understanding the wisdom wing first, which is what we've studied so far, not yet complete, in the Discovering Buddhism modules. The very first level of this practice, the first level of one's practices, which are expressed in the first scope or the lowest scope of these teachings, or I call junior school, the essence of all that is abiding by the laws of karma. This is where we state Buddha's view of the universe, that every being you know, suffers as a result of their past actions, and every being is happy as a result of their past actions. This is the fundamental principle, the natural law that Buddha has observed that runs the universe. And without understanding this path of compassion doesn't make sense. This is the point, you know. This is why compassion is not enough. We need wisdom. This is why you can't just leap into university of any level of body of knowledge without having done junior school and high school first. It's absolutely logical. So to get that and have that inform our understanding of these levels of compassion, then it all begins to make sense to us, you know. So then we get to high school, where we start, the essence of that is to then really learn to control the mind. We learn to understand the delusions and the virtues and how to distinguish between them. And why we need to is because the virtuous states of mind drive us to do things with our body and speech that benefit others, which leaves karmic seeds in our mind, which produce our future happiness. And we try to avoid the delusions, the neuroses, the attachment and anger and the rest that inform our body and speech that cause harm to others, that sow seeds in our mind that will ripen as our future suffering. So all of the first and second scopes, all of the wisdom wing, all the junior school and high school are all driven by the wish not to suffer. And who are we talking about? Oneself. The essence of all this is the Four Noble Truths, you know. It's all, the beneficiary of this level of practice is us. We don't get this in our culture. It just sounds like it's selfish, you know, we just don't really hear it properly. But if we don't hear it properly, we can't understand the purpose of the practice, that we can't see compassion and bodhicitta in the proper framework. Because what, in a sense, the wisdom wing is getting compassion for yourself. In a sense, you could say that we understand in our culture. They don't use those terms in Buddhism, but that makes complete sense. Why you want to refrain from killing and stealing and lying, and why you want to give up attachment and anger and jealousy and pride, is because you are sick of suffering. You are fed up with suffering. You're up to here with suffering. That's what renunciation means. It's not some holy religious kind of indifference, you know, oh, I'm renounced. No, it's an intense recognition of the suffering. We don't like talking like this in our culture. It sounds depressing. We have to be aware of it. It's like, you know very well, you will, until you know the suffering of being an alcoholic, until you know the suffering of eating too much food, or being a junkie of video games, or the suffering that comes from this. You don't realize the suffering, you will never want to give it up. That's the wisdom wing energy. When you understand what suffering is, and when you understand the causes for yourself, then you will want to give it up. Now we bring that to the wisdom compassion wing, and we realize, oh my God, we are all in the same boat. And now that same energy of wanting to give up suffering and its causes now reverts to others. I want to help others give up suffering and its causes. But you can't know that until you know it for yourself. I can't stress this enough, and we just don't get it. It's hard for us to get this. So what would you be like if you got some degree of renunciation? What you'd be like is a joyful human being. If you've got less, if you kill less and steal less and lie less and badmouth less and have less attachment and less anger and less anxiety and less anger, and you're going to be more loving, more wise, more fulfilled, more content, you'll be a glorious human being. We all want that. Now you have the space and the wisdom and the courage to want to help others achieve the same thing. This is what informs the compassion wing. So, okay, the essence of the first one is to abide by the laws of karma. The essence of the second level is to get rid of attachment. And now the essence of this next level of practice is to accomplish this extraordinary mind called bodhicitta. If you were to achieve it on the basis of these 11 techniques, which we're going through, the combination of these 2 techniques that are expressed in the course notes that you've got, you'd be an amazing, I mean, you'd already having enunciation be extraordinary, you know, hang on. You'd be an amazing being. Just having renunciation, just doing junior school and high school, you'd be mind-bogglingly amazing. Now with compassion, you can't even imagine how you'd be. If you've got bodhicitta, once you've accomplished it properly, not just some kind of vague notion of it, an actual realization, which would be stable in your mind, there'd be no longer some of the criteria. One of the criteria, you know, one criterion is you'd no longer have the thought of I. Think of that. Even if we're nice people, I is the main pronoun in our head. Think about this. Everything's in reference to I.
And we, of course, it's considered utterly normal. I mean, to have bodhicitta where there's no longer the thought of I sounds like serious mental illness in the West. So we've got to really have a clear understanding where all this fits, you know, and to know that we're talking something possible, not just something in the sky, you know. I know when I was a Catholic and I was really in love with God and in love with Our Lady and in love with the saints, I yearned to be like those saints, but I didn't know where to find how to become a saint, because there's no thing that says now you become a saint. Well, that's what this is. We are discussing methods for how to become a saint, basically. A person who's beyond delusions, beyond ego. It is a possibility, and the techniques are still there, extant, living, being practiced and experienced every day by real human beings. So it's not just some fantasy thing in the sky where you cross your fingers, you know. So be no longer the thought of I. There'll be no longer a thought of getting something for I. It wouldn't arise in your mind. So anyway, bodhicitta, the two main qualities of bodhicitta, this mind, this state of mind. One is you'd only think of others and only therefore exist. It's like you're a mother and everybody on the planet is your child. So when a mother sees her child, she never forgets that it's her child and it's her responsibility. Unfortunately, mothers never give up even when the child is 90. They still think it's their job to take care of the little boy. But mothers, by definition, define themselves as the mother when they see the child, and they know it's their job. This is a nice way to put. That's how bodhisattvas think about every being, every pedophile, every ant, every dog, every creepy rat. Unbelievable love and compassion for them. Unbelievable awareness and understanding of their mind and their suffering. Unbelievable understanding of their karma and therefore how to help them. That's a bodhisattva. And constant. It's not just occasionally of a gooey feeling. It's constant. So it's a pretty outrageous state of mind, you know. So, okay, we began last week. We began the week, generally we tried to describe in the very first week just this framework of trying to get our head around what bodhicitta is. Then second week we did it again too, and then we discussed the first step with equanimity. We spent most of our time discussing equanimity, which is the foundation, the basis upon which we then practice these other 10 techniques that culminate in the accomplishment of bodhicitta. So I sent Tara these 11 steps in the cultivating of bodhicitta. I'm going to use this as our basis today. It's just very brief. A brief summary in my words of these 11 techniques. And as I discussed last week, it's a combination of these two systems that the course notes discuss, with the two systems that have been used over the centuries for the cultivation of bodhicitta, but it's a combination of those two. And this is coming from Pabonka Rinpoche. Hang on a second, please. Just a minute. Okay, never mind. Okay. No, I have to do something. Sorry, wait. Just a minute. Where is it? What's going on here? Wait a second. Sorry, I'm not quite ready. View. Okay, that's done. Wait. Document. Where is it? All right. So we started with equanimity. So let me say again precisely what this equanimity is. We can't just make up our own definitions. And this is the problem. We might be able to understand if we're studying logic and analysis, we discuss the mind and all the contents. There are very precise definitions. But when it comes to compassion and things, we think it's all kind of a bit gooey and yucky, you know, kind of all a bit sentimental. But like always in this system, there's incredibly precise definitions of each state of mind. So we have to be super clear about these definitions, because each one is precise in its own in its own what it is, and there are precise methods for accomplishing it. So this first one is called equanimity. So in Buddhism in general, there are two, you could argue there's various ways of using this word equanimity. One way in the wisdom wing, the first and second scopes, once you've kind of, I'm sorry, I have to stop again. As you progress on this inner work of stabilizing your body, your speech, and your mind, stabilizing them, not being up and down like yo-yos, dragged from pillar to post by the outside world, which is normally how we are, very unstable. No equanimity whatsoever. So equanimity there is more within your own mind, a sense of stability. You're more stable emotionally, which is marvelous. We need and want that. But here the equanimity is different. It's referring to this view in your mind that's super clear. This is my way of defining it. It's this heart, when you've got this equanimity, it's a heartfelt recognition in your mind that all the people who are the objects of your attachment, whom we can label here friend, and all the people who are the objects of your anger and aversion and disgust and distaste, and there's lots of them, who we label enemy for the sake of a label. And the third category, all the other beings in the universe, which is 99.999% of them, who for whom we have complete indifference. So we have attachment for the beloveds who do what I want, and we adore them. We have aversion to the ones who don't do what I want, proactively don't do what I want, don't agree with me, have a different politics, behave badly. We have aversion for them, friend and enemy. And the third lot are strangers, and they're people who've neither harmed me they're ones who've neither harmed me nor helped me. Think of this. And that's most sentient beings. So how do we feel about those who do what I want, the beloveds? We adore them and have compassion for them. How do we feel about the ones who harm me or have bad politics or do terrible things to harm the world? We have aversion or even anger towards them. That's the label, the enemy. So those who do what I want, I adore them. Those who don't do what I want, I don't like them. And the third lot do neither. They neither harm nor help. And because of that relationship with me personally, I don't care about them. We so take this for granted, I think. We just consider it's normal behavior. But the Buddha's perspective, in reference to what we can accomplish, it sounds pretty shocking. It's kind of totally self-centered. But so to even question this is quite shocking for us. So this equanimity is the foundation upon which we will now begin to grow love, compassion, great compassion, and bodhicitta towards all these sentient beings. And why it's so important at the beginning is because now the logic, we say we do have love. So love is defined as the thought, begins with a thought, may you be happy. It's wanting others to be happy. Compassion is, may you not suffer, wanting others not to suffer. That's the meaning of love and compassion. Now, the point here with equanimity, we only have love and compassion for that first group. It's kind of natural. It's surprised to think, you mean I've got to love everybody? How exhausting. But this is the whole point. This is where we're heading, you know, because the reference, the reference point here for friend, enemy, stranger is I. If you do what I want, I love you. If you don't do what I want, I don't like you. And if you do neither, I don't care about you. It's pretty shocking to hear it like this so bluntly, but that's the normal world. So equanimity is the shifting first of that assumption. So now when I say, I love you, the only person I say that to is I love you. And you'll say, if we were doing analysis, why do you love me, Rabina? Oh, because you do what I want. We would never say that, but it's true. As Lama Zopa says, our love right now is unstable. It's based on you fulfilling my needs. I mean, it really sounds shocking, and we almost feel embarrassed to think, you mean I should love them for another reason? Well, yes, is the point. So what's the logic we're trying to shift to now? What's the reason I want you to be happy? With attachment, the reason I want you to be happy is because you satisfy my attachment's needs. Now we'll try to shift that to this point. I want you to be happy. Why? Because, honey child, you want to be happy. That's the meaning of love. I want you to be happy. Why? Because you want to be happy. And when we recognize, this is equanimity, that the friend, the enemy, and the stranger are equal. This is my definition. It's a heartfelt recognition that the beloved the object of your attachment, that the ugly one, the object of your aversion, and that the boring one, the object of your indifference, the friend, the enemy, and the stranger. What equanimity is precise recognition that those three people, and the whole universe is divided into those categories, that those three people are equal to each other, just from one point of view. They could be equal from more points of view, but the point here for equanimity is one point of view. They equally wish to be happy, and they equally wish not to suffer. That's the point. That's the purpose. That's what equanimity is in your mind, that recognition. And when it's stable, you'll be already incredible. We haven't begun to develop love and compassion yet. That comes 5th, 6th, and 7th, and 8th, and 9th, and 10th points. We're setting the ground ready to grow it, to develop it. But it's a recognition that the person who you adore, the person you can't stand, and the person who is boring to you are equal to each other from this one point of view. They each only want to be happy. They each only want to not suffer, and they each, that's it. That's the one simple point. That's the point. But of course, we've got to, like we were discussing last week, we've got to cut through layers and layers of assumptions so even to get to hear that as something meaningful. That's equanimity.
One moment, I think we can't hear you, or is that just me?
I just blew my nose and I forgot. Given, so okay, this next one, or number 2, you'll see it in the notes there. You've got the course notes in front of you. There's the separate document I sent Tara. Yeah, all sentient beings have been my mother. This is the weirdest concept we've ever heard. What the hell do we do with this, you know? I mean, we're almost thinking Buddha's trying to make us suffer, you know, because half the time we think our mums, the modern world's view is who causes all the suffering of the planet is our mum. You know, mums get all the blame. We know that if we are a mum, you know, or a mom, as the Americans say. So, okay, what's this point then? What's this point? It's just a way of saying it. What we're trying to do here is given that there are countless sentient beings, or given there are countless mind possessors, sem-chen, I love this term. That's the word in Tibetan for sentient being. It's the term they use, you know. If a Christian, you talk about all the souls, and that's only humans. Then you've got the animals, but they don't have souls. But for the Buddha, we're all sentient beings, we're all mind possessors. We want to be happy or don't want to suffer, and we're all experiencing the fruits of our past actions. We're all created ourselves, whether we're in the hell realms, the spirit realms, the God realms, the animal realm, the human realm. Same. So all these sentient beings whose minds are beginningless. I mean, I think this is a mathematical thing, and I asked a mathematician about this. He thought it was a load of rubbish. If anybody's a mathematician there, tell me your thought. If there are countless sentient beings, if those minds are all beginningless, then the logic here is it follows logically that we've bumped into each other in countless lifetimes. And more precisely, for this point here, every sentient being has been my mother in countless lifetimes. It's just a way to frame this vastness of the number of sentient beings in numerous lifetimes, which is the Buddha's view. It's in order for us to get this sense that we have a connection with every sentient being, and that if they have been my mother, the whole point here, the logic of this and the next point, is the idea that a mother is a person who's been kind to us. So, I mean, we may be the third, see, the second point is just this point. Like I said, get your calculator out, you know. There are countless sentient beings. If there are countless sentient beings, if they're all beginningless, and we have logically bumped into each other countless times, which you could say is that they've logically all been my mother in countless lifetimes. Well, as His Holiness said to us Westerners, if you don't like the idea of being your mother, just think of being your father, or being someone who's nurtured you. The only logic, the only idea of you saying the word mother is referring to a person who's taken care of you. But if we all hate our mums, it doesn't work, does it? So you've got to think it through. So that's the second point, this vast idea. There are billions of beings that will be my mother. So the point of it is expressed in the third point. there's two parts to this point, two parts for this first one. So here we now contemplate the kindness of the mother. Now we could spend the rest of the day, and we can't do that because we've got 11 points to get through before we finish next week. But this is a huge point. And again, we've got these layers and layers of assumptions in our mind based upon ego, based upon the materialist view, based upon the idea that mother made you, based upon that you're an innocent victim, based upon the fact that indeed some mothers are terrible people. Nobody can argue with that. Not saying they're all saints. So what we've got to try and look at here, this is what my way of thinking, what do we even mean by kind? It's a really good question. Let's look at this. So as usual, we're all self-centered. This is the point the Buddha is saying. Attachment drives all of us. And because it's so intense, my feeling is when we say, oh, she's so kind, what we mean is that person just did what my attachment wants. Think about this. Forget mothers. You're in a cafe. You order chocolate cake and the waitress smiles at you and she gives you extra piece with extra cream and gives you a discount. You don't care what she really thinks about you. She can be cracking jokes about this to the cook, about this fat Australian Buddhist nun out there. Look how ridiculous she is with her attachment to chocolate cake. But she'll smile at me and she'll give me an extra piece and give me a discount. Of course I will think she is kind. Why? Because she's giving me what my attachment wants. This is really powerful to look at in our lives, okay? This is our logic of what we mean by kind, that a person does what I want. I mean, if there's a person next to me in the other table who I hate, and the waitress is kind to him, I'll just think she's being deceitful. Can't she see he's an ugly creep? Look at her. You look at her try to seduce him to give her a tip. I won't think she's kind. I think she's crazy. You understand? We really are so naturally self-centered. Enemy, friend, and stranger, attachment, aversion, ignorance inform everything we do, So even our view of kindness in general, if a person's kind to me, is because they do what I want. I mean, when your mother is using tough love when you're a little girl and she says, you go to your room. I've told you 4 times, no more chocolate. You won't think she's kind. You will think she's horrible. But that's kind. So here in this compassion, we've got to really reframe what we mean about these words. They're much broader because they're informed with wisdom, informed by wisdom. So, okay, given that kind, the way we're the meaning here, the bigger meaning of kind from this Buddhist perspective, especially in the compassion wing, is that, on the simplest level, yes, a person takes care of you. But another level of kindness is that they help your mind. So your mother, when she tells you to go to your room, she is being actually really kind to you. But we don't think it, we just want only attachment to get the nice soft ones, So kindness is a bigger meaning. But here the simple meaning of kindness of the mother, here the meaning is quite straightforward. It's the fact that she did anything at all that supported you. Forget the tough love. Now, our problem is, when I was a little girl, I had attachment for my mother. That's how we are, attachment. So my mother, like in the beginning, we're in love with our mother. Think about this. In the very beginning, we are in love with this person. She looms large in our life. Okay, maybe you didn't have a mother, but generally speaking, all right? Maybe you had a father instead or something, but never mind. See, when I was a little girl, I was in love with my mother. She was this amazing person. I adored her, And then, of course, when I started to get a bit older, I remember the first time I questioned my mother. It's a very vivid moment for me. I don't know how old I was, maybe 11, I don't remember, 12, maybe more. When I started to find fault, it's a huge shift. It was when my mother, as we say in English, fell off the pedestal. It's a powerful point. Then from there on, aversion started to take over and it was downhill from there. And you all know when you get to about 14 or 15 or now maybe by the time you're 10, who knows, you can't stand your mother because now you know what? Attachment has been replaced by aversion. And now all you do is see the bad things. This is what attachment and aversion do. We know this. Attachment only sees the good qualities, and then aversion only sees the bad qualities. But this is the problem with so many of us in our culture. Once you start to get angry with your mum, and then you stay angry till the day you die, and you believe she's the cause of all your suffering, and you write a book about your memoir of your monstrous mother, and the psychiatrists and psychologists talk about terrible mothers and what terrible mothers do. Isn't it? We understand this. So let's say your mother indeed was a neurotic mother. Let's say she really was. There's nothing special. But why? We have to ask the question, why does it shock us so much that our mother was deluded? Think about this. It's so fascinating. We know the world is full of human beings who are extremely deluded, meaning extremely suffering. And as a result of their delusions, they cause other people suffering. Well, guess what? Your mother might well have been one of those people. But why are we so shocked that my mother was so evil? In other words, there's a deep assumption in there, isn't it? That somehow attachment is believing that somehow I only deserve the best mother in the planet. It's a shock to us that our mother treats us badly. Now, if we've been to junior school and understood karma, already when we look at this number 3 point, contemplating the kindness of the mother, already our mind has shifted dramatically, and we know why I have a mother who's a creep. We know why, due to my past karma, due to my past behavior towards this particular person whose womb I went to at conception, due to my karma, we know why our mother is deluded and has harmed me. And that will inform our understanding of this particular point, to contemplate the kindness of my mother. We'll understand the meaning. But if we haven't done that earlier work, it's completely puzzling to us. What do you mean my mother is kind? She is a monster, and many mothers are monsters. It's true. So if your mother has been neurotic and heavy and deluded and miserable and self-centered and a control freak, join the universe. Then how are you going to see some kindness in your mother? Well, there's lots of ways, okay? And I'm going to go through them. But you've got to have a mind that's ready for that. And if you haven't done the wisdom wing, you won't know how to see this. That's why something as simple as saying, think about the kindness of your mother, is not just something cute. It's informed by understanding karma. It's informed by understanding the middle scope about the mind. It's informed by the wisdom wing. It's informed by your own inner work. So if you had a mother, if you've got a good relationship with your mother who's been adorable all her life, then it's easy for you to do this meditation. It's easy. But if your mother is a creep, is neurotic, is deluded, this will be more difficult for you, but it's still totally possible. Now, when we understand that when you've got attachment for your mother, she looks divine, and that's very helpful. When you've got aversion for your mother, then this is the point about these delusions, they exaggerate certain aspects of the object. So in this case, let's say you have aversion for your mother, and your mother indeed has harmed you. I'm not arguing with this. Then all you do, this is the point, all aversion does is see the bad things. You can't remember any of the good. So the point here is it's very specific of how to contemplate this meditation here, is how to contemplate the kindness, is simply to remember the good things that your mother has done for you. It is as simple as that. So what's the first thing? Well, you know, she carried you in her womb for several months. We're talking about the woman who gave birth to you, okay? We're not talking, I mean, this is this case. Maybe your mother gave you away at birth, and there's a good reason to think she's kind as well there. We'll discuss that in a minute. So we're taking the assumption here of the mother, you know, who gave birth to you in the womb. Well, you know yourself, if you have done that, you know what an incredible job that is. How unbelievably kind you are that you sat there for 6, 7, 8, 9 months holding this baby inside you, dragged down with the weight, thinking of it every minute, feeding it every day, thinking about it, suffering as a result of it. Well, your ugly neurotic mum did that. Write it down. Make a list of the good things that your mum did that you've forgotten. The next thing she did, if she's, you know, and there's variations of this story, she gave birth to you. Now, I've heard people tell me about the nightmare of giving a birth out of that little hole in your body, and this fat baby has to come out, and the agony and the drama. Forget about the agony and the drama for the baby, but for you, the mother, I can't imagine that level of suffering, you know. She did that for you. She did that. She did that. Then she fed you. She might have been an alcoholic on the floor, drunk, but she still fed you. And she wiped your bottom, and she tied your shoelaces, and she taught you how to talk. She might have hit you in between those. Yes, I'm not disagreeing. But she did do those good things. You see, the thing is with attachment, you only see the good things, and aversion, you only see the bad. So this is a very practical, humbling process of remembering the good things she did that aversion has forgotten. You're going to start, what you're basically doing, you're learning to paint a new picture of your mum. That's what you're trying to do. It's a very powerful exercise, very humbling. Okay, if you've done no wisdom wing and your mother was neurotic and beat you and abused you and you're not ready for this, well, excuse me, you don't do it. You're not ready yet. You'd work on your own mind first. You deal with your own pain and resentment and anger first. But this is assuming you've done that work already in the wisdom wing. This is assuming that. Let's say your mother gave you away, okay? This is one of the commonest reasons that we suffer terribly, this terrible feeling of rejection. Some people have that so painfully. You know, that you were rejected. And then all your life you have that. Well, as we know, if we've studied the mind, that is due to karma, that you got born to a mother who decided that she would give you away. You created the cause due to your past negative karma to be rejected by that mother. You created the cause. She wouldn't have done it otherwise. This is a fact. That's why we have to understand karma first. So that why is that mother kind? Well, I always remember many people I know have been, have given away their babies. So there's one particular woman I know who gave her baby away and then eventually met the baby. When the girl turned about 20, she was able to meet the child. Well, they never got along that well, and eventually the child rejected her again, and it was heartbreaking for her. But I mean, this child never forgave her mother for giving her away at birth. But let me show you this. At that time, I was in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and I had an abortion in the 60s, and a couple of my friends and my sisters had abortions and blah, blah, blah. And this particular woman, when she was 17 at that time, she refused to have an abortion. We say, come on, have an abortion, it's easy, it's easy. I'm just saying facts, okay? She didn't want to have an abortion. She wanted to give birth to the baby, and then she gave it away because she would, at that time in the 60s, it was very heavy to have a baby out of wedlock, So I know this woman, and I know her motivation was very pure, but the child has only resentment for that mother because she gave me away. Well, you know what? This is my point. How was that woman kind to that baby? She didn't abort her. So if you had a mother who gave you away, you're still alive, right? And that's because your mother did not abort you. Your mother didn't abort you. I think that is enough reason to have unbelievable love for that mother of yours until the day you die. That is unbelievable. This woman I know, at the same time I was young, she made this conscious decision. She would not kill her baby. I'm not being rude if you did have an abortion. I had one. But that we never think of if you're alive still. All you do is hate your mother and blame your mother, and she gave me away, and she's this and she's that. And we do this with everybody. We only see the bad. When we're angry, we only see the bad. We only see the bad. We only see the bad. We only remember the bad. We become obsessed with the bad. That's what anger does. It's totally distorted. It's not the whole picture. It's not reasonable. It doesn't mean people didn't harm you, but it's not the whole story. So your mother gave birth to you. Your mother cleaned you. Your mother wiped your little bottom. Your mother woke up in the middle of the night and fed you. Your mother helped you grow up. Your mother educated you, fed you, looked after you, taught you. She might have hit you in between. Yes. She might have been drunk on the floor in between. Yes. That does not contradict the fact that if you started a list, you'd have hundreds of simple little things that your mother did for you. These are scientific facts, people. And it's a powerful meditation, contemplation, exercise to remember these things. Make a list, write it down. So what you're doing is you're painting a new picture. You know yourself, if you're a mother and your daughter has rejected you, you know the pain. You know she's only seeing ugly. She's only seeing the things that she thinks you did bad and is only blaming you. You know it is not fair. You know it is not the real picture. You know that. So this is the exercise here. It's very powerful, I tell you. Remembering the kindness. So now the logic is, if all sentient beings have been my mother, then they have all been kind in the same way. So what's the consequence of all this? This is for the heart to start to open. That's the point of all this. It's the heart to start to open to all sentient beings, where suddenly when you've got this realization, that's why they use the term mother sentient beings. Mother sentient beings. Every sentient being, when a bodhisattva's got this, every sentient being they see, it's just impulsive. Mother sentient being. The kindness of that ant, that dog, that pedophile, they've been my mother in countless past lives. They've nurtured me and loved me and stroked me and helped me live my life. That's what we're trying to cultivate. These are little bare bones techniques to help us open the mind to see things differently. This is what we're trying to do here, okay? Are there any questions about this? Particularly about the mother. Are there any questions, please? Keep it specific. Yes, Lorraine.
Thank you, Venerable. So I am dealing with a child that I had who hates me now, and I recognize that I did the same thing to my mother. Where I'm
Yes, that's right, Lorraine. Exactly, isn't it? It's very humbling, isn't it?
It is very, very humbling, and very where I'm catching is
Yes.
on the sorrow of it, because it really does break my heart, and that's
right.
really hard to find a way out of that without, letting it consume you,
That's right, exactly, Lorraine. So that's why, when we realize our own selves, why we did this when we were younger, we had all this attachment, and then we started to grow up and try to get free of our mother. So then we start to find fault with our mother and blame our mother. So when you understand that process in yourself, then you'll understand the process in your own child, and you'll have some understanding for it. And it won't totally, it'll break your heart, but you'll know why it's happening because you know your own process. That's what it means by the wisdom wing first. You understand that, don't you?
Yes.
That's the point, darling. That's the point. And then just be patient and keep loving her, and try not to buy in your own paranoia, and just be patient and just be there, and just be there. And one day you pray that her mind changes,
Thank you. My mother is there for me now, so I'm looking forward to that.
That's it. At least you heal that with your own mum, and one day that it'll be right with your daughter. I know this is such a classic story, isn't it?
Yes, and I had the opportunity to meet her mother before she passed away.
Oh, how wonderful. Yes.
And I was glad because I hadn't had the opportunity to really get to know her. And I started seeing these patterns of depression.
Yes, I hear you.
Still kind of working with that as
well.
There
you go. Well done, Lorraine. Fantastic, darling. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Who else has a question about the mum?
Julie, you have a question?
Good, Julie. Talk to me, sweetheart.
I was wondering if the same principle applies to fathers.
I think the point is it applies to everybody. The example here is just the one person, the mother. And if you think about your own daily life, the ex-boyfriend, the neighbor, everybody, of course, we're using this as the one example. So of course it applies to anybody at all, Juhi. So whatever person you want to put in there, that it's exactly the same exercise. It's very powerful. Exactly, sweetheart. Exactly.
So when you mentioned the example of your mother not aborting you, even with a difficult relationship, which was not the case with me, but I would think that your father also contributed to not having you aborted in a way.
Oh, of course, but we're just discussing one person here. We're using the example of mother. That's all, as one person. It's a case, one exercise. Then you can refer to whoever you like. Of course, there's multiple things going on there, aren't there? Of course there are. Yes, exactly right, Julie. Of course there are.
Thank you.
All right, darling. What else is there, people? What else is there? Any other questions about the mother? We'll carry on. We'll go to the next point, if not. Okay, so 3B. This is a very fascinating one. It seems more abstract in the beginning, but it's in a way, they say it's a more profound way to grow, to develop slowly this wish that others be happy. And it's called contemplating the kindness of all beings. All beings are kind. This is a bit more subtle and more abstract, but once we understand it, we will see clearly this more fundamental meaning of the word kind. Here, what it means is this, and it's really based on interdependence, dependent arising. Think about this. This is my way of describing what this attitude is. Since the time you were conceived, up until now, I think we could say scientifically, logically, that every tiny thing that has facilitated our life is the result of the handiwork of countless sentient beings. Well, start right there with your mother and father. Your consciousness it ran somewhere to get a birth. Well, it ran to the egg of your mother and the sperm of your father. So that's two human beings without whom you would not have a life. Right there, two of them. Then from the time you're in the womb, your mother fed you. And so what did she eat? She probably ate mountains of fishes and mountains of bulls and mountains of chickens, and then all the veggies that she ate that caused the death of many sentient beings. So this body of my body, as we say so possessively, excuse me, by the time it came out, in my case, after 7 months, I came out early, but perhaps most of us, it's 9 months. What happened? Okay, then, you think, look at the number of sentient beings, lives and deaths that were involved in you simply to have a body. This is absolute scientific logic. Your body, by the time it comes out of your mother's womb, is a mountain of cows and fishes and potatoes and carrots and dead sentient beings, and the blood and the flesh of your mother. But I always tell this story as Kirti Senja Rinpoche said one time, I'll never forget, talking about some level bodhisattva, a person who's been through all this and has accomplished this bodhicitta, has already probably realized emptiness. For this bodhisattva, he said, to cut off their hand and feed it to a starving animal, that action is as inconsequential as a leaf falling off a tree. Now that's impossible in normal terms to comprehend, but this is the result of all this work we're describing. So for that person, the idea of my body would literally not exist. They've realized emptiness is no longer a neurotic sense of self. They've got these unbelievable levels of bodhicitta way after all these points we're discussing. Then their love and compassion for that sentient being who is starving would be so stupendous that the idea of feeding them their own hand is like nothing to them. Meaning their mind is not as if they're indifferent, it's not as if they're autistic and don't feel anything. It's that their love and compassion are so gigantic, they override any thought of the suffering that it might cause to one's own body to cut your right hand off and feed it to them. This is inconceivable to us. Well, we're going through the steps to get to that point, okay? So everything since we were conceived up until now that has facilitated our life, this is my way of defining it, is the handiwork of sentient beings. And it is absolutely scientific logical. So let's just think of the woolen blanket. When my body came out of my mother, and the nurses at the Mercy Hospital, they were the Catholic nuns, they probably took my little body and wiped off the blood and the yuck and put a little and warmed me in warm water. So think of even, and they put a little blanket around me, okay, to keep me warm when I come out of the womb, 30 seconds, 1 minute of birth. So that, think of the woolen blanket. What's a woolen blanket? Well, look at the number of sheep whose wool was, cut off their bodies, and then people took that wool and they strung it out and they did all these things, and they were sent to the wool factory where it was made into long pieces of wool. And then the person who made the factory, think about this, the person who made the factory, the architect of the factory, the workers in the factory, the people who made the benches in the factory, the plumber who did the plumbing in the factory, where they put the wool, where they made this blanket, then you can't even get past that point. You're going to find countless sentient beings, all of whom are interdependently connected. In order for the wool to be made, there has to be a factory. In order for there to be a factory, there has to be wood. In order for there to be wood, there have to be trees. In order for there to be trees, there have to be, look at the connectedness of the whole universe. This is the logic here. So that by the time that wool got to that blanket, the people who made the blanket, the people who shipped it to the Mercy Hospital, the nuns at the Mercy Hospital who ordered the woolen blankets, make sure they weren't polyester. They probably didn't have polyester in December the 20th, 1944. So then the nurses who got the woolen blanket out of the cupboard and they wrapped Rabina in it. Oh my God, I should be fainting with bliss already after 1 minute of birth. Are we communicating? That's this contemplation. It's mind-boggling. So that we know it intellectually when we hear it, but just, you know, why is it we don't see it every second? Because we're overwhelmed by getting what I want. So when I go to the cafe and I order my burrito down there, Cafe Palacio, 1 30-second walk, you know, my delicious burrito, you know, and let's say it's not the perfect burrito today. So what you do is complain. But that burrito, the lovely owner of the shop, all the girls who serve in the shop, the people who made the burrito, people who made the you know, the chapati, the Indians call it, I forget what you call it in Mexican, the piece of bread, and then the beans and the greens and the onions coming out of the ground, and the creatures who died when they picked the onions, the people who grew the onions, people who drove the onions to the Cafe Palacio, people who chopped the onions, people who fried the onions, the gas company who provided the gas. You know, I mean, think of it. The whole world is an interdependent scenario, and it's all the handiwork of sentient beings. Now, the fact of the matter is that cafe owner might be a pedophile. Well, you know, in terms of this meditation, it's not the point. He did the job of serving me a burrito, you know. All sentient beings are kind. So the kindness here is not this view, oh, they did something for me. It's the fact that, well, I know it is in a sense. There's 2 ways we say kindness. Like I said before, one, we say a person is kind merely because they did what I wanted. That, you know, that we think of them as kind. Oh, they're kind because they helped me. But the other one is we indeed can see some people who've got this kindness about them. You can feel that. That's true. But here, the general point about being kind is not in their nature kind. We're not discussing the person here. Think it is a really crucial point, because we will say, how can you say that guy who serves you the burrito, who's a pedophile, how can you say he's kind? We can't. And we're not saying in his bones he is kind. We're not saying that. This is a fundamental point to get. The point here is the very fact that all those sentient beings worked on that, you know, the creatures in the ground and the little chickens and the people who worked and the ones who provided the gas, all of those people did those things. So it ended up that you get a burrito. So all those beings are involved in this interdependent process of finally producing a burrito. They might be pedophiles, they might be creeps. That's not the discussion here. That's how we tend to think. If you say he is kind, then he must be a good person in his bones. No, that's not what's being said. It's a crucial point to understand. It's the fact that their action facilitated my life. It's as simple as that. I've got to be very clear. I always think of my glasses. I'm as blind as a bat without my glasses, you know, even with them sometimes I can't see. These ones aren't so good, so you look all blurry to me. I'm extremely long-sighted. So when I was a little girl, I went cross-eyed. My eye went right in, you know. My eye went right in because I couldn't see properly. So I think everything was out of focus as a little girl. They didn't know that until they discovered. I kept falling over things. They probably discovered I was clumsy, but this I couldn't see. So I forced my eye in towards my nose, and that brought my eyes into focus. So they got me to the doctor. From the age of about 2, I wore glasses. So because I'm very long-sighted, this eye is about plus 12, you know. So now I can't see a thing without my spectacles. Not a thing. So when I wake up in the morning and forget where I put my glasses, I've got to stumble around like a blind person, feeling my way to look for my glasses. You know, so I can't exist without my glasses. It's a very powerful point. Anybody who wears glasses knows what I'm saying. So look at that. I mean, these days, the glasses, these ones aren't the ones I normally like, my ones with no frames. So they're so skillful the way they use the material now. It's really fine, subtle plastic. They cost a fortune, but they're really thin. When I was little, the glasses I had were like such thick glass, you know, it was heavy on my poor nose. But now clever people, intelligent human beings who indeed might be pedophiles have created thin glass, special subtle way. I've got triple things. You know what they call it? Triple, you know, I've got long distance, middle distance, and short distance. You can't see the difference. All these clever people have invented these clever ideas so I can see properly. I can exist. I can live my life. I have such gratitude to these intelligent people. So they are kind. Yes, they might beat their husbands. Yes, they might be pedophiles. That's not my concern here. The kindness is insofar as they did it such that I can survive. That's the approach here. So when you start to think about everything, my shirt, this woolen shawl, the number of sentient beings involved in making this, and the little lambs and all the people and all the factories and all the people who dyed it. It's obvious, but we never think about this because we're only prepared to say thank you and think a person's kind when you get what you want, you know. But everything in your life, there's nothing you can think about in your life, nothing from the second you wake up until the second you go to sleep that isn't the handiwork of sentient beings. Therefore, your existence is utterly dependent upon the actions of sentient beings. That's pretty profound, I would say. And if you don't have as a thought, the conclusion of these meditations, which is the fourth point, the conclusion is, I must repay their kindness. When you've got that feeling for somebody, like to say, I remember one time, one of the lamas said, when you're traveling in the East and suddenly somebody really helps you, you run out of money or, you know, and someone supports you, you never forget that kindness. And your first instant thought is, what can I do to repay it? That's what we're trying to cultivate here. We've got to go through this logic of thinking of all this kindness, of thinking of all these actions, so it becomes real in our heart. And this is the beginning now of the development of bodhicitta, where we start to think it's my job. I want to repay their kindness. What can I do? Of course, the goal is I must become a Buddha. So then I can repay it. But these are the steps we go through to gradually program our mind into this mind of a bodhisattva. These thinkings, people do retreats on these for years to finally culminate in this profound bodhicitta, you know. So this thinking, it's all intellectual thinking, it's analysis, it's logic, using logic to argue with ego's misconceptions. Meditating on love and kindness and all these different points isn't just some gooey sentimental thing. It's using very precise logic. These thoughts are very precise logic to argue with ego's misconceptions, to break down the barrier that delusions have created between other and self. That's what we're trying to do here, you know. This is a huge one. You can't argue with this one. You can't argue that everything you know, your house, your chairs, your food, your things, your glasses, your own body itself, the work of your mother and father, animals, the clothing, your iPad, everything that you use in your life, which we take for granted, are the handiwork of sentient beings. It's impossible to argue with it, but to remember it and think about it and see things, it's profound in the effect that it can have on you in increasing your love and compassion. Or no, sorry, wanting you to get to love and compassion, which is the steps we're taking, to open your heart to others. And this fourth point is like a conclusion. I have no choice then. I must repay their kindness, so we continue on the path to eventually get bodhicitta, to eventually become a Buddha. And the purpose behind all of that is to repay the kindness of these sentient beings over countless lifetimes who facilitated our life. It shifts now to number 5 into the other approach of exchanging self for others. But I want to stop here at this point and let's see if we can have some discussion, please. These 3 points are really powerful. Equanimity, the kindness of the mother, all beings have been our mother, the kindness of the mother, and here more crucially, the kindness of all sentient beings. And the conclusion, I must repay their kindness. So I want some questions and discussion now. I don't want to go on to the next shift until next week. The next approach, you know, number 5. Any question at all, anything, any argument with all this? A load of rubbish. I don't care what you say. Bring it up, discuss, talk. Yes, Jane.
I thank you, Venerable. My concern is I'm kind of a people pleaser person. So when it gets to the repay their kindness, my fear would be I'd get attached to how to repay that and be a good person and do.
I understand, darling. So Jane, yeah, good. So Jane,
Thank you.
the whole point here, Jane, is these approaches are based upon the work you've done in the wisdom wing where you have dealt with that. So you've got to try and understand that at the level of the wisdom wing, you learn to give up your attachment. You've become wise. You've become clear. You don't get hooked by other people's craving to like, you're craving for other people to love you. There's an assumption here that you're really clear about that already. So try and imagine that you've got some wisdom already, and that wisdom doesn't allow you to rush in and be a people pleaser and then make a complete mess. And the repaying one is more broad in terms of the long-term, I must become a Buddha, then I really can repay it. It's the more long-term one here. Do you understand what I'm saying, Jane?
Yes.
We all understand your point, and it's a huge one. So that points back to the work we need to do in the wisdom wing, where we really learn to, this is in the second scope, in the middle scope, where we learn about attachment, and the main attachment, the deeper attachment, which they don't really begin to talk about until we go further on, where we have this craving to be seen as a good girl, Jane. That's people pleaser. And then that messes up your compassion. Here, we're trying to just look at the love and compassion without the attachment. We're trying to separate and trying to see these aspects. But we all understand.
So it's taking out that kind of obligatory feeling you have that you would have in the wisdom wing, and just doing it more for the purity of becoming a Buddha.
Try to at least contemplate the meaning of these concepts, the idea without the attachment, trying to get separated from the attachment. And that's why the more we've done the wisdom wing and the analysis of the delusions and the attachment and how it causes us pain and how it messes up our compassion, the more we've done that, the more we can clearly just focus on these particular points without worrying about the attachment. Do you understand?
Thank you.
But it's a totally important point. It's a classic point for all of us, you know. It's really important.
Thank you.
Good, darling. Yes, Lorraine.
Thank you, Venerable. So I'm in a situation right now where I don't have any problem feeling compassion and love, even for the person at work who is being absolutely rude to me and driving me nuts. What I do have an issue with is how, because I'm not even sure if I can stand up for myself without being walked on.
Well, that's exactly Jane's point. That's exactly Jane's point, darling. That's the wisdom wing work. Let's talk about it. No, you see, that's the wisdom wing is where you learn first to control your body and speech, because you know you're sick of suffering, you don't want to harm others. And then you start to really do the work of being your own therapist. You understand the attachment so deeply, and why you why you allow yourself to be walked on is because you've got this attachment to be approved of. Everybody's got it, Lorraine, everybody. It's Jane's point in another way. This is where we've done the wisdom wing, we've got some wisdom, and now we focus. These points are specifically focusing on the virtue. This is not asking you to do anything. It's asking you to think of these points and to think of how all sentient beings facilitate your life. It's very specific points, Lorraine, very specific. Try and hear the logic in these points themselves. Okay. Can you hear my point?
Yes, I'm just, it's just very frustrating for me because I feel.
What's frustrating for you, Lorraine? What's frustrating, Lorraine? Which point specifically? Because
I'm trying to find words for it. It's just I want to stand up for myself, and I feel like. Okay. So
Lorraine, we're discussing the wisdom wing here. You understand it's the wisdom wing. Do you even get what I mean when I say the wisdom wing or not? Do you understand it or not? Be very sincere with me.
I'd like to know more about what it means.
Well, you have to study it. This is the trouble. This is kind of all these teachings I'm given are based on this big system. And the wisdom wing is learning to know your mind, Lorraine, knowing why you suffer. So you're describing to us, like the rest of us, why you suffer. You suffer because you feel that you can't stand up for yourself and people misuse you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. Stop, Lorraine. So everybody has that in one way or another. So the antidotes to that is the causes of that are your own delusions, your craving to be seen as a good girl, your attachment to get what you want, your attachment to only get the nice things. This is what the wisdom wing is. We dig deep and put our hands in the shit of our own attachment and craving and neediness, Lorraine. This has got nothing to do with your compassion wing. This is a much more advanced level. We're only focusing here on the good qualities. So we can't do this, and this is exactly your point, because if you're overwhelmed by attachment still, and honey, you're just like the rest of us, you're just describing what we all have. And the work about that is to be your own therapist. And we're talking the Buddhist logic here. We study the Buddhist analysis of why we suffer. And Lorraine, we suffer because of our attachment, our anger, our depression, our jealousy, our low self-esteem, our ego grasping. That's Buddha's analysis, and that's in the second scope, the part of the so-called wisdom wing as I'm talking, and that's all about you. There's no discussion of helping others yet. So that's the work that informs our ability to go to this next level and to start to cultivate the virtues within us.
Yes, I felt like I was making some progress. I think it was last week when I was dealing with this, and I was in a Qigong with Gina, and she does this thing where you do this shake to get all the negative energy off. And I was thinking about this issue and felt like this person who I felt was throwing a tantrum, then I felt like I was the one throwing the tantrum. And I felt kind of a connection with this person.
Well, good. That's showing you
level.
seeing your own mind. The simple point that Buddha's making, which has gone into an incredible depth, Lorraine, is that the delusions in our mind, the attachment, the fears, the jealousy, the depression, the anxiety, they are the main source of why we suffer. These words are so simple, you can memorize them in 1 second, but look how hard it is to see it, Lorraine. That's the real work of being a Buddhist. Then we allow ourselves, when we get some success at that, then we become able to start to grow our virtues. So one way of describing the whole path, the wisdom ring is learning to deal with the shit in our mind, because that's what causes us pain. Now, having done that to some degree, we can now start to grow the virtues in our mind, the love, the kindness, the compassion. They're very specific approaches. Do you hear my point?
Yes, I feel very much like I started Buddhism in the middle, and I'm still trying to figure out.
No, I understand where to fit it all. It's true. It's very complicated, but but when we get to see the relationship between these stages, it really helps our mind, Lorraine.
Yes, thank you.
Good, darling. Thank you so much. Yes, Monica.
Thank you, Venerable. I haven't been like very present in the life teachings, but this question is kind of mixed between, you know, the last module and this one, because I still kind of have a hard time, for example, when you mentioned, for example, the case of people that harms others, but at the same time, like, give something.
Sorry, darling, what's the question? I'm getting a bit confused. Why don't you ask me a question?
My question is, like, I have this problem, for example, like feeling some anger towards people that are abusive towards others.
Right, exactly.
So
the question, what's the question?
The question is like, how, I mean, I know that I need to keep going on the path.
What's the question? What's the question? Just say the question. So the point was, I get angry with people who do harm to others. We understand that. Now, what's your question on that? What's your question?
How to develop that compassion?
Good. Now that's enough. Thank you. All said. I will answer your question now. Very simple. Very simple, Monica. Again, this is the point about these stages of practice. The very first level of practice, Monica, given Buddha's approach that we're driven by ego grasping, the sense of self, we're driven by attachment, we're driven by anger, we're driven by jealousy and resentment. Given that, our first level of practice is at least control the servants of those states of mind, and that's your speech and your body. So at least don't harm others.
Okay.
That's junior school practice. Now that prepares you to get to high school, which is what I've just been discussing with Jane and Jane and Lorraine, you know, is you now start to dig deep into your own mind, Monica, and you're going to now discover attachment, which is this junkie in you and the rest of us that only wants the nice things, that only wants to get what I want, that only can cope with lovely things. You hearing what I'm saying? And then when it doesn't get lovely things, this attachment, it will get angry and upset and anxious and worried. Are we communicating?
Yeah. So what?
No, please, Monica, I am trying to go one step at a time in explaining the answer to. Do you get what I'm saying so far? Do you recognize this?
I get it. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, there you are with attachment that only wants nice things. Join the universe. So now you look at the world and you see some creepy guy abuse somebody. Naturally, your attachment doesn't like to see that. Your attachment wants everything to be lovely. So then naturally you will get angry with that guy, won't you? You with me?
Oh, yeah.
So stop right there. So what do you do with that? You're just pointing out what Buddha is telling you, that Monica, the reason you are suffering is not the guy who harms others, is your attachment only wanting lovely things, and then the anger that arises when that attachment doesn't get what it wants. So where your work is on attachment and aversion. Now, when you've subdued those to some degree, and this is my point now, when you look at your life, Monica, and if you can think of even 3 things you've ever done to harm others. Have you ever done anything to harm others in your life, Monica? Ever?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
No, that's enough. You recognize that, right? And now guess why you did it? It wasn't out of love and kindness. It was out of anger and resentment and attachment and fear, wasn't it?
Yes.
So when you know that for you, that's the wisdom wing. When you recognize clearly why you suffer is because of your delusion. Then when you see this guy, what's that noise? Then when you see this guy who harms others, you see he's harming others, but you will know why he is harming others, because of his own delusions, his own craziness. And that becomes the basis of your compassion for him. You want compassion doesn't just mean, I'll pat him on the head, the poor guy can't help it. It means you have the wisdom to know why he is harming others. It's because he is suffering from attachment and anger, just like you. That's the logic, Monica. Are we communicating?
Very well understood. Thank you very much.
So you have to internalize this one step at a time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you very much. Venerable.
Thank you. Are there any questions about any particular meditations I have been discussing? Hello, Stina, yes.
Hi, Venerable. In relation to Monica's question, why is it attachment? I mean, I see the other person who is harming the third person. Isn't it, like, I'm thinking it's about care for the person who is being harmed and not my attachment for one thing.
I understand, darling. But I understand, Stina, this is the interesting point. The normal have, when you see a person harming another, this points to the only compassion we do have, which is for the victim. There's no such concept in our world for having compassion for the harmer. Are you hearing my point? That's why if we don't understand the wisdom wing first, if we haven't understood karma even basically, if we haven't looked into our own mind even basically, and if we haven't seen the attachment and the aversion, it's not possible to have compassion for anybody but the innocent victim, which is the only compassion we have now. And the compassion we're trying to cultivate is that is for every sentient being, because we are all driven by attachment and aversion. We all harm each other because of past karma. That's why the wisdom wing has to inform this level of compassion that we are trying to cultivate. It's not an easy one. Are you with me? Theoretically.
No. No, I'm like, just the question, why is it attachment?
Why is what attachment?
I get upset, I get sad
when
I see this harm being done.
Because, so then if you've studied the Buddhist model of the mind, and in these modules, it's way back at the beginning, if you've looked at the Buddhist model of the mind, the Buddha tells us we have a bunch of deluded states of mind, neurotic states of mind, the states of mind that are driven by the sense of I, and they all cause us suffering, and they're called attachment, aversion, jealousy, depression. So attachment, like I said to Monica, is a junkie in your mind, Stina, if you're like the rest of us, and you're just an example of a human being. Attachment is so primordial, we don't even notice it. So that the primordial level of attachment is this junkie inside us. It's very fragile, that only wants everything to be lovely. And then the minute you don't get the lovely thing, even when you just break a cup, even if you just get the red light, what arises is panic or anger. How dare that red light come? Oh my God, I broke a cup. You should not do that. Look at the smallest events in our daily life and we get upset, irritated, frustrated, angry. Well, anger, or the mild aversions of it, are the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. These two states of mind, which sound so cute, are primordially deep, and the understanding of these is the crucial part of the job of, as Lama Yeshe puts it, being our own therapist. This is the work in the Buddhist view of the wisdom wing, where we work on our own mind. This, and if we haven't done this part, then all this stuff that we're talking about just sounds weird, you know.
No, what you said now makes a lot of sense. It's just the thing that the harm wasn't being done to me, the harm is done to another person. But I think I get it more now. At least. Thank
What,
you.
darling? You what? You what, sweetheart? Say it. It's good.
I
talk.
get it more now than before your explanation.
Okay. So listen, okay, good. So listen, the other thing is when we learn about the mind, which is the middle scope, as I call it, or they call it that, or the middle, the section, the first part of the work, the wisdom wing, where we do the work on ourselves. What we've got to understand is there are neurotic, deluded, ridiculous states of mind, and then there are the positive ones like love and compassion. So it's very clear when you see that person being harmed, immediately your compassion is there and you have empathy. But what we don't notice is it's driven by and it's polluted by the attachment in us, which is this junkie in us that only wants everything to be lovely. So can you imagine you've done the work on your own mind, you've given up attachment, you'll only have compassion then, and you won't be distressed. You'll just have this energy to want to help. You get my point now?
Now I get your point. Thank you so much for your patience.
And this is the wisdom wing work, to distinguish in our own mind between the neuroses and the virtues. They mix together like a big soup right now. And that's where the real work happens, where we start to know our own mind so well, we can distinguish the attachment from the love, the attachment from the compassion. They're very different. This is not the materialist model. It's quite a different model of the mind, but it's quite distinct. Do you understand me? Good, Stina. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What else is there? Something there, Tara? About these particular techniques: equanimity, seeing all beings have been my mum, the kindness of the mother, and repaying the kindness. Yes, yes, Ariella, talk to me.
Thank you, Venerable. I'm sorry, I just can't comprehend the I, the me, the junkie. In regards to the attachment, when I see somebody getting hurt.
Okay, so stop. I hear you. Ariella, let me ask you some questions then. Let me ask you some questions. Do you get upset?
Yes, when I see.
But that's stop. So stop. Is that distressing feeling? Is that a distressing feeling?
Yes.
Okay, so the Buddha's view of the mind is this. Listen to me, Ariella. This is not the world's view. Now, if you haven't studied this view, it's peculiar. So this is the point. The Buddha's view of the mind is this. We have some deluded, neurotic, disturbing states of mind. Can you hear those words?
Yes.
The attachment is a deep junkie in Ariella that is like a little girl that has a panic attack whenever she doesn't get what she wants. Can you hear that?
Yes.
Then you have anger when it doesn't get what it wants. Can you hear that?
Yes.
Then you get jealous and depressed and anxious and arrogant and low self-esteem. Do you recognize those states of mind?
Yes. Depends on the situation. Yes.
Of course it does, but we've all got them, haven't we? We recognize those. So the Buddha says those states of mind are why we suffer. They hurt us. Can you hear that? Can you hear that? Yes. And then on the basis of those neuroses, we then do things to harm others. Can you hear that? Have you ever harmed anybody in your life, Ariella? Ever, with your mouth?
I'm sure I did.
There you go. Join me.
Of course.
So we know, Ariella, that anything we do to harm another, even say a mean word, what causes that is these unhappy states of mind. So we'll leave that alone. Now we have another lot.
But I didn't go kill them.
Ariella, please go. Ariella, would you kindly go one step at a time?
Okay.
Follow my logic. So far you've recognized those states of mind in you. Yeah?
Yes.
And you accept that you've done bad things to people, even mildly, on the basis of those. You with me? Now, let's look at the other part of your mind. That's called love, which is a delight that people are happy, and compassion, which is the wish they be not suffer, and all the good qualities, patience and generosity and kindness. You recognize those as well.
Yes.
Do you recognize when you have those states of mind, they're not disturbing? They're spacious and lovely feelings. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the trouble is we have all these mixed together like a big soup. You with me?
Well, yes.
With me so far. Now, because you have attachment to get only the lovely things, and then you get angry when you don't get it. Now you see the guy harming another, then attachment doesn't want to see that. So then anger will arise in Ariella's mind, won't it? Anger arises because not because he's harming that person. You think you're angry because that guy is harming the child. No, you're angry because your attachment isn't getting what it wants. And then you blame that guy for your anger.
That's
now,
where my disconnection is.
Ariella, you've got to follow my thinking. If you want the Buddhist answers, all I can do is give you that. You can do what you like with them. You can throw them out, sweetheart, but I'm trying to give you the basis for this thinking. Now, the first thing we've missed out altogether, in order for you to understand why that guy harmed that child, the Buddhist answer would be is because that child in a past life when it was an old man harmed that old man now who was then a child. So karma is the real cause of why we do anything good or anything bad to anybody. Now, if you don't have the view of karma, Lorraine, Ariella, none of this makes sense. So it's up to you to do what you like with these Buddhist approaches. I'm not trying to shove them down your throat, darling. I'm trying to give you the basis of thinking, which will explain something to you from the Buddhist perspective. That's all I can do. And all you can do, if you want to, is look into this, read it, study it, think about it. And if you want to, take it as your working hypothesis for how you understand the world. That's all we can do with this information. Buddha might be talking a load of rubbish, Ariella. You have to find out. So when you have the view of karma, one, you will know why that guy harms that baby. But listen to me, Ariella, when you know karma, you will know why that man is kind to that baby, because that baby, as an old man in a past life or an old woman, was kind to that person. Karma takes care. Karma is the main cause of why anything good and anything bad happens. And then the other explanation is to understand the way the mind works. These are the fundamentals of the wisdom wing in Buddhism. This is the nuts and bolts of Buddha's view of the universe. We don't have to study it, darling. We don't have to believe it. We don't have to even think about it. But this is what these classes are about. And all I can do is give you this information. And then it's over to you to do what you want with it, argue with it, think about it, analyze it, and then decide what you do with it. Are we communicating, Ariella?
Yes, and I'm grateful and thankful.
Thank you so much, darling. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, people. Yes, Barbara, answer me. Talk to me, darling.
Okay, so I was very attached to my mother. I thought she could do no wrong. And when she died, a secret came out and it was earth-shattering. And I went from extreme attachment to extreme aversion. And the way that I worked through this was I began to see her as her own person in her own life.
That's right.
And that maybe what she was doing in keeping the secret from me was out of kindness.
There you go.
And that she had her own compassion and her own wisdom.
That's it.
But I wonder, and this is a technical question, is that moving me in the direction of equanimity, to see her as a separate other and to see her as good?
Well, I think it's a good way.
Or is it is it trying to reestablish my attachment to get out of aversion? So
I do understand. It's a good point. Now, I think the first thing we get when we look at this attitude of equanimity, you could say the first thing we're doing is getting ourselves out of the equation. Absolutely. And when as a child with attachment, you're linked to your mother like as if you're an extension of her, isn't it? And so so getting yourself out of it and seeing your mother as a separate person, that's exactly the right thing to do. Because we just assume she's an extension of me and she has to do everything I want. That's just all the delusions do that. They hold on to the object out there. So then getting yourself out of the equation is exactly correct. So keep going and simply recognize this human being, as a separate person whom you have karma with. This is perfect what you're doing. And don't increase your attachment. No, you increase your love and compassion for her. You increase your wish, just a recognition that she's a human being working her own life out. It's fantastic. It's good what you're doing. It's marvelous.
Okay, thank you.
Good, Barbara. Thank you so much. So yes, Lorraine, one more question, darling. What is it?
Yes, thank you, Venerable. You've discussed a lot about the things that inform delusion. And when I look at the way that I was viewing my mother before and the delusion that informed that, and I started looking at the delusion, just like what Barbara was saying just now, it had nothing to do with my mother. And I started to see it had something to do with me.
It's all about our own view. It's our own views. Exactly right, Lorraine. Yes,
Yes.
exactly right.
And
That's
I'm just trying to figure out where that came from. Are there any
delusions,
steps?
darling, from habit? You came into this life program with these delusions. That's what Buddha's view is. We've had these delusions for countless lifetimes, and that's what he means by being in samsara. It's driven by attachment and anger and the neuroses. So the understanding of these gives us an understanding of why we are who we are and why we suffer, and therefore why others suffer. This is just the Buddhist analysis, you know. It comes from having done these before, having seen this before, having said it before, having felt it before. And then secondly, you've got this strong karmic connection, some strong history with this person labeled your mother.
Yes, and now I kind of feel like that going over and over, it is just hitting the same wall again.
What do you mean over and over? Sorry.
There's just the, hitting that same delusion again and trying to figure out how to decipher where that delusion came from and
sorry, Lorraine, I thought I answered that. So what do you mean by where it came from? What do you mean by that, darling? What's your analysis? What do you mean by where it came from?
Maybe I'm trying too hard to figure it all out.
No, you're not trying too hard to figure it out, but you know, if you're trying to figure it out, if we're using Buddha's analysis, you need to know the words. You can't figure out math if you don't know math. So if you don't know the proper Buddhist terms, you can't figure it out. You don't have to use Buddha. You can use Jung if you like. I'm just getting the Buddha's view here. So where your attachment comes from, Lorraine, is from past attachment. And where your attachment came from yesterday is from attachment the day before. And where yesterday's came from the day before. It's just a constant series of habits in your mind. That's where your attachment came from. Don't try to look for some big bang beginning. That's meaningless. It's just habit. Do you understand, darling?
Yes, thank you.
Good. What else, people? At 25 past. Any more questions? Notice I've had not a single question about these conflicts. I've only had questions from the wisdom wing, unfortunately. This is always what happens. It just shows we're mostly not qualified. It shows we're not qualified for the compassion wing. It just proves the point, you know. So it's good to see that. Linda, hello, darling.
Hi, and thank you. My question is based on some discussion questions from last week related to different Buddhist schools of thought or maybe tenet systems and the implications of someone who is striving for nirvana. And we are all studying in the context of Mahayana, which goes past that. So there were questions about the motivation. Do they have motivation for compassion? And it sounded like maybe once they clear their mind, there would be compassion. I don't know.
That's a really good, no, it's a very good point. It's a really good point, Linda. So I think I might have discussed this, but let me just say it again. So let's just say we've got the whole path and the end result is Buddhahood. So this is why I like to use junior school, high school, and university and postgraduate as our analogy. So going from the top down, the back, there's junior school first, then there's high school. Now that is the Hinayana path. So if you graduate at high school, that means your goal, when you're in junior school, you know you're going to graduate at high school. So your goal going through junior school and your goal going through the earlier stages of high school, your goal is you're going to graduate when you're 16. Do you understand what I'm saying? So your goal throughout those lives is I must get out of samsara. I must get my own nirvana. I must quit my own suffering. That's the goal. Are you hearing me? That's pretty incredible. So when you've accomplished that goal, and at some point in one life or other, you will achieve that nirvana. So then let's look at how you would be. You'd be free of all the delusions. You've given up the I, you've given up attachment, you've given up all the neuroses. So what's left? Well, you've only got love and only compassion and only goodness and only kindness and only empathy and only patience. You've got masses of the positive qualities. You're an incredible person. Are you hearing me? So now what happens is, because your goal is to graduate at high school, and also because the bonus of having accomplished this nirvana, having all the virtues, you're already also got incredible bliss. That's a natural consequence of ridding the mind of delusions. So you're totally blissful and you're totally virtuous. Not totally, but then when you die, that goal and your bliss override your compassion and you zap into bliss and you don't come back. Are you hearing me? Now, let's say you decide you're going to graduate at postgraduate. You're going to get to high school, you're going to go on to university, and you'll even go on to postgraduate. You understand what I'm pointing now? And you're on the Mahayana path. So now what happens is you might even get to the stages of the same realization and you don't need to come back. But for you, your motivation is to keep going all the way through university. So when you even get to the point where you don't need to come back, at the point that you die, your motivation of going to university, which is driven by compassion, compassion will override your bliss, and you will consciously come back. And then you will go onto the bodhisattva path, and you will practice these stupendous, outrageous levels of love and compassion and bodhicitta, to the point where even the lowest level bodhisattva can manifest their mind in 100 forms simultaneously throughout countless universes to benefit countless sentient beings, because your compassion and wisdom are so tremendous. So the love and compassion that you can cultivate on the compassion wing are 1 billion times more powerful than if you had when you'd rid the mind of all the delusions. You with me?
Thank you.
Good point. Thank you, Linda, so much. Okay, yes, Juhi. Sweetheart, talk to me. Unmute yourself, darling.
Sorry. So Venerable Katie Cole starts most of her meditations with the suggestion, I should say, with having all the people in your life surround you, like your friends next to you, your family next to you, and people you don't like / enemies in front of you. She always starts the meditations like that. It's helpful, whether it's the loving kindness meditation or Chen Rezik or any other. So recently I started noticing that I had a larger group of people that I didn't like. It's shrinking. It's becoming smaller.
Good. So then the question
is, why is that happening?
Because you're improving your mind, it's obvious. So it has to be. The mind is your main thing. So if you're improving your mind and you're getting more forgiveness and more patience, and obviously you have less enemies, it goes without saying. You know, the enemy, there's no anger, there's no enemy. So clearly you're getting less angry. It's very logical, very simple.
So that's, I was hoping you'd say that, because that's where I wanted to see
it's
the
logical,
most
but it's
change.
logical. It's logical.
Yeah.
There's no anger, there's no enemy. Even if people
Yeah.
are killing you, there's no enemy. And of course, that's hard for us to understand. But we have to understand, that's why we have to understand the mind. It goes without saying, Dewey. So well done. Keep moving, baby.
Anger, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
keep moving. Yes, Resham.
Hello, Venerable. Okay, so we are saying that all sentient beings have been my mother. We want to contemplate on that. Can this be flipped around where we say that I have been a mother to all sentient beings too?
You can, but it's not the point here. The point here, the only reason behind thinking they've all been my mother is so you can start to see how kind they are. Of course you can. The other way around, of course you can. But the purpose here is very specific, is to open your heart to all the beings, to know that they've all been kind to you at some point when you do the number 3 technique. That's the reason behind this one. Of course you can think that way. It's a lovely thought. Nothing wrong with it. Yes,
Okay.
darling, absolutely.
Thank you.
That's it, I think. Yes, any more?
And there's one question in the chat box.
Yes,
The
please. What is it?
microphone isn't working, so I'll read it. What is the Buddhist view on parenting when your adult child is struggling and self-destructive? Understanding that karma is at the root of everything in our human experience, and that I cannot just intercede at will. What, if anything, can be done? Tom Len, thank you. David.
So David, yeah, absolutely. So the broader question is, we've got the wisdom wing and we've got the compassion wing. So compassion, what we're trying to cultivate with these techniques, is this powerful wish that others be happy, and this powerful wish that others not suffer. And then the next level we're getting to eventually is this called this great compassion, which is, what can I do to help? So whether it's your child, as you've just described, or whether it's an ant, the attitude is to have this compassion. And clearly, if it's your child, you only want to help them. You only want them not to suffer. But that's compassion. Now, the role of wisdom is knowing how to accomplish that. That's what wisdom is. And we get the wisdom by working on our own mind, lessening our attachment, lessening our fears. So if it's an adult child, we've got it. I mean, parents have attachment till the day they die. And that, of course, is powerful. But there's also the love and compassion there. So one, what can you do practically? As you said, intervention. I don't know, it's so hard, especially if it's an adult child. And so many people are self-destructive, and it's heartbreaking if it's your own child. So if there is something you can do, you have the wisdom to know that and you do it. If there's nothing you can do by intervening, then all you can do, as you're suggesting, is practices. You know, you could have pujas and special practices done, like say Medicine Buddha at say Kopan Monastery. You could do anything like that to try and yourself do these practices. Tonglen is mainly for your benefit, but like love and compassion, or do Medicine Buddha, invoke the Buddhas, say mantras, do have pujas and prayers done utilizing the Buddhas. They're the very powerful practices. And if you want to know about that, then I think you can email me if you like, and I can tell you whatever you like, David. You can work it out and get my email and ask me, and I can help you know how to email Kopan and get pujas and prayers done. But they would be the most powerful. To go monks and nuns to do the practices of invoking the Buddhas. They can be the ones if you can't intervene, if you can't make it happen, you know. So that's a really powerful one. So if you want to discuss that with me, you're very welcome, David. I think that's it today, people. Goes like a dream so quickly. So the thing is with these techniques, I mean, all the questions, we can see it, are all to do with, because we've still got attachment, we've still got anger, we don't understand karma properly. Of course, we're all like that. So that's to try and hear these different levels of practice specifically in their own level. You know, these words, on the face of it, these words are quite simple, but they're hard to get emotional. You can hear that from Ariela's questions. You can hear from other people's questions. So the more we can understand the different practices according to these levels, the more this all makes sense to us, you know. So try and look into these little practices. They sound so simple, but try and, so the general point is the first level is to lessen our own delusions and fears and neuroses. And this next level is now how to cultivate our virtues. There's specific approaches, you know. So do the best we can with them all, and we'll continue and finish these 11 techniques next week. Thank you so much, everybody. Jangchod, Semchog, Rinpoche, Ma Kye Panam, Kegu Chig, Kye Panyam Pam, Mepa Yang, Gongne, Gongdu, Pelwa Shog. And all these seeds we planted, they've not gone astray. And we think when they do ripen as our Buddhahood, may we then use that to be of benefit to others. I'll be so happy, and just keep moving, people, keep moving, keep looking, keep practicing. And like I was saying to Ariela, it's up to us with what we do with all this information, you know, because it's all very connected. And if we don't see the whole picture, it's a bit confusing. So just persevere with it all. Don't swallow it whole and try and believe it. Just don't just throw it out like a baby with a bathwater. Just think it through and try and see the logic of it, even if it's hard for us. And then just one day at a time, see if we can work with it, you know. And thank you, all of you, you know, for your questions, Lorraine and Barbara and Ariella and Chris and everybody. Thank you so much. All your questions, everybody. And Monica. Much, much love, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Goodbye. See you next time.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.